Let us work. We are sick and tired of going to strike and missing overtime and all that stuff. We need some strong man, strong government, a leader, a savior is needed. Population is sick and tired already. And here we are. We have a savior. Either a foreign nation comes in, or the local group of leftists, Marxists, no matter what they call themselves, Sandinista, a reverend or some sort, Bishop Muzureva, like in Zimbabwe, doesn't matter. A savior comes and says, I will lead you. So we have two alternatives here. Civil war and invasion.
We're going to have a civil war. It's going to be great.
See how it goes? Civil war, we know what it is. Lebanon is the best example. The civil war, which was artificially implanted in Lebanon by injection of force of PLO.
By the way, the civil war that we're going to have in the United States is not Democrat versus Republican. I know there's a Civil War movie coming out. I know they're going to probably make this argument. We're going to like, and conservatives make this argument all the time, like Civil War, 1776, Civil War. Like, the Civil War that we're going to have in the United States is not Democrat versus Republican. Does anyone want to guess what the Civil War we're going to have is? What do you think? It's not it's not left versus right. What do you think it is? Well, no, Tim Pool does not understand what I'm about to explain to you. He does not. Tim Pool thinks it's going to be left versus right. It's going to be red versus blue. That's not what the Civil War is going to be. No, this is a throwaway. This is not what it's going to be either. It's not going to be socialist versus the capitalist because most people don't understand that capitalism is their greatest enemy. They have no idea. So it's not going to be that. It's not going to be urban versus rural. That's not what it's going to be. Nope. It's not going to be a war between the classes. Nope. Nope. Not going to be authoritarian versus libertarian. That's not what it's going to be. Not going to be the proletariat versus the bourgeois. That's not, actually, this is the closest answer so far to what I'm thinking. This is actually probably the closest answer. It's not 100% correct, but it's more true than it is false. The civil war that we are going to have in this country is going to be the radical revolutionary socialists versus the government. That's what it is. The radical revolutionary socialists, who, by the way, are armed. They are armed. We've watched presentations where they're talking about arming themselves. They're going to try to overthrow the government. And then the military is going to come out, and it's going to be this whole big thing. But it's going to be the radical revolutionary socialists trying to overthrow the government because they very literally say they want to overthrow the government like all the effing time. They want to overthrow the Constitution. They want to overthrow the Bill of Rights. They want to get rid of all the courts. They want to get rid of the United States Senate. They're going to try to overthrow the government. That's the Civil War. It's not going to be red versus blue because conservatives are way too effing lazy. It's the Red Guard. This is exactly right, Rottweiler. It is the Red Guard. It is Mao's Red Guard versus the current regime. It is the overthrow of the government. Now, I don't know who I would cheer for in this particular scenario because I hate the government. I don't want the government to exist. I'm an anarchist. I do not want the government to exist. So, one could argue that I should be on the side of the radical revolutionary socialists. However, I also don't want the radical revolutionary socialists to control my life. And in trying to overthrow the government, the radical revolutionary socialists are trying to put themselves in the government. So it's not as though the radical revolutionary socialist defeat of the government is going to get rid of the government. It's just going to install the socialist government of the United States. The Red Guard will impose their own socialist government. So we're pretty effed either way. That's what I think is going to happen anyway. Cindy, I'm glad you stuck around and made this point. Cindy is making an excellent point going back to the notion of what I think is going to happen in the Civil War, which is it's going to be the radical revolutionary socialists versus the government. In the long march through the institutions, they got themselves into positions of power within the government. So really think about that. The radical revolutionary socialists who absolutely and unequivocally are going to try to overthrow the government at some point. There is no doubt in my mind this is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. When over the next 25 years is this reality going to manifest itself? I'm guessing probably in the 2030s, maybe closer to 2040 than 2030, maybe around 2035, so maybe about 10 to 15 years maybe. They have spent, what is it? Since like this, like make it a nice round number, say since the 50s, they have spent the last 70 years getting themselves into positions of power in the government. Do you really think that they're not just trying to make the government easier to overthrow? They've got, it's sleeper agents, guys. These are sleeper agents. This is what this is. This is like when this is like in that show, The Americans, where the Russian spies were in America and they were just living as like everyday Americans. This is the same exact thing, except it's radical revolutionary socialists in the United States government, and they've just been sitting there waiting to be activated. Or what was that Angelina Jolie movie, Salt? Angelina Jolie, raised in a Soviet, it's a great movie, actually. I really like this movie a lot, actually. But it's Angelina Jolie, raised to be a Soviet spy from the time she's a kid, goes to America, gets placed within an American family when she's a little kid, goes her entire life, goes to the best schools, gets that, what was she, like an FBI agent or something? She was in the FBI. And then one day, her teacher, who she last saw in the Soviet Union when she was like 5 years old, shows up in America, and all of a sudden, decades in, married, has a husband that she loves that she wasn't supposed to marry, so she got in trouble for that. All of a sudden is activated as a Soviet agent. It is exactly the same thing, except it's radical revolutionary socialists in the government.